Hi, everyone. Following up on the memo from Dr. Kim regarding some of the changes and adjustments in our University of Maryland Extension reporting system, which we collectively called UMERS. So, of course, we've been putting in our data associated with our educational contacts and the demographics associated with those, for a number of years, many of us our entire careers. But periodically we have to make some adjustments based on the contemporary needs of our federal partners. We receive, millions of dollars from our federal partners at USDA NIFA, and with those funds comes some expectations associated with deliverables, and further that we are following all reasonable efforts to reach all of the residents of our state, and then further that we help them to know that should they need an accommodation associated with the Americans with Disabilities Act or other parameters that would help them to feel like they belong and that they're welcomed at our programs and so forth, then we can provide those, but then further that we're able to then demonstrate what those demographics happen to be. So the UMERS is focused on that. It's always been concentrated around the collection of demographic data, predominantly associated with sex or gender, our ethnicity and race. So there have been some adjustments to that. So let's just hop to it and work through those so that we're all on the same page about what those happen to be. I'm going to share my screen. I already have the site open. You can get there a variety of ways. I just type in UME answers and it pops me over and I go to the links and there's UMERS, but you all may recognize this, especially if you're a faculty member, because you recently put in your faculty activity report. And of course, we used all of this information, but for probably the last, since we've had UMERS, we've had a couple of iterations of where it resided, but more recently with the universities, I'm going back up to show, relationship with Watermark or faculty success and that platform being available, that's where our UMERS system resides. So I was mentioning about the changes in direct event. So I want to concentrate on those, and I'll just go ahead and pop to the side. I'm going to pretend like I'm adding a new record, and then we can walk through this together. So there is some really important lead-up information that I'll leave to you to read associated with why we, as a direct recipient of federal financial assistance, are required to collect this data and so forth. There's some highlights of that. I just mentioned about the deliverables and the expectations. There's some other important information associated with all the land-grant universities across the nation have to have some system where they collect this type of information, and so that's referenced. There's some other detail. For instance, here's a thing that often comes up in our educational programs. We may do a one-time educational event, or we may do a series. Whether it's one time or whether it's a series, the person registered with us once. So that's our educational contact is one. They might have come 6 times to an event. Maybe I did a series on how to prune roses or grow roses, and one session was on selection, one was on soil prep, one was on planting it, the next one was on pruning it, harvesting the flora, whatever it happened to be. But that's one person that came to that particular program. So anyway, that is covered. And so all of this is important information, so we encourage you to review that. So I though want to concentrate on our direct entry area, especially associated with sex or gender and ethnicity and race. But leading up to it, there's a couple of, since we have each other's company and attention, I wanted to speak to a couple of things that often come up as questions. One is the program title. You can call this whatever you choose. This piece doesn't actually go to our federal partners, but it does provide an opportunity for you to think futuristically that at the end of the year, you could have, if you named all of your programs something that had the same, a portion of the title that was the same, you could build a query in the future and search by that topic. So that's just a little trick of the trade to put in. So I do a good amount of work in DEIR program and diversity, equity, inclusion, and respect programming, especially with LGBTQ plus children and families. So if in fact I wanted to query that at the end of the year, I could put DEIR, I could put LGBTQ plus. I also do a lot of work in international programs, so I could start, international. That I made that all big. Sorry, it's still big. Look at that. I'm making it small again. International, and then call it something else. International. Like I do there's a project that we work with in Tanzania. I can't even spell that. Tanzania. Yeah, I can. We do another program we're trying to begin with Ghana. I do another one that we do in Great Britain. Regardless of this other part, this helps separate it for me. But the international part is what I'm drawing attention to. You're using consistent naming, and so that helps you to sort it. So just a little bit of the trick of the trade. The start date, this is also a question I often get. It literally, if it's a one-time program, then you'll just put in the day. Maybe I held it on February the 15th, 2023. It was that same day the program I'm reporting is I held it, maybe it was an hour program. And so you just put the exact same date. If it was a series, like I referenced earlier about rose pruning, if it was over the course of time, maybe you started February the 15th, but you wrapped up April the 10th. So you would put your end day of April the 10th. We have initiatives that the college focuses on. And so you select the one that most closely aligns with the program that you're offering. Sometimes these fit kind of in different areas, but you're really try to concentrate on the content of the program that you're delivering, and that'll help shape where or which of these initiatives that you check. Now, this is a little bit of a change. We've always asked for major program area focus. All of our program areas have some focus areas that we've had. In our past iteration, though, these were check boxes, and what we're running into is folks were checking multiple boxes, which made it very difficult to sort the data by major focus area, of course, if you checked everything. So now this is forced choice. You select, again, based on the emphasis of your program, which of those it may be. So to pick on ag and food systems, maybe it's under an agronomic crop as an example. That's my educational program, but maybe the particular program I'm doing at one point is on, soil readiness for planting that crop, or rate of the planting that particular crop, or something like that. So depending on the emphasis of that, I might select a particular area. If it was more on entrepreneurial concentration, maybe diversified agriculture, or maybe it was on increased profitability or whatever, I might select another area depending on, again, the focus of that content. All the subject matter is similar. It's that agronomic crop, but depending on the educational program, they might land at a little bit different area. We also ask about how you delivered that program, where you did it. Most of the time, many of our folks are single session workshop in person. That's what we've historically had. However, the last 3 years, we've certainly had a big uptick in virtual teaching via distance technologies and so forth. So that could be a mechanism as well, but you just check that. If you don't find the way that you delivered that program or how, the delivery method, then you can check other. And then, whoops, I scooched down too far. Sorry about that, y'all. There's an other, and then you can just explain what that is. If it was multi-session, how many sessions did you have? That's a question. If you did an accommodation, if you made an accommodation for somebody that aligned with our the Americans with Disabilities Act, or you are concentrated on accommodation associated with limited English proficiency, then what was that? What did you do? And so that's a opportunity to check that. And then there's an other, and if it's not found, what accommodation you made, and then down below, again, you can type out what that other is. There's also a question here about if in fact you had to pay a cost for that, what is that cost? So if you had to hire somebody to come in and sign using American Sign Language to go along with you, or your presenters, because somebody requested an accommodation because they were hearing impaired. If that was $250, then you could put that in. So all of these required, there's some required pieces and so forth that you have to put information, some of these other elements that, as we go along, if for some reason the system doesn't move forward, then you can put, a zero value in, just put a 0 or something like that. But this is often it's going to predominantly be the asterisk information that will require you to have, a specific entry. So we also need to know what you did to promote that program, whether it was, a flyer, a mailer, email, newspaper, social media. And if it's not there, there's an opportunity for other. This is going to be enhanced if you did the program with other states. If you joined other states and so forth to offer this educational program, then you would just type that in. Many of our counties, especially close to the Delmarva Peninsula and so forth, often do cross state lines programming, so you can put that in. Again, this report is concentrated on Maryland. The key information that goes to our federal partners will be drawn from those sections where there's an asterisk that's required information, and that's the part that goes. These others are information that you may need or the broader organization may need when we look for multi-state programming. If it's an integrated program between the experiment station or our research side and extension, if it's in-state, you check that. Multi-state, you check the next. We have program initiatives. Dr. Deb Patra puts our federal report in. And so to do that, she draws heavily on your impact statements, all of our impact statements that we put into the system. Also, she readies for the director and the dean, our associate dean and associate director and the dean to approve a plan of work that's submitted to NIFA. And so there's some major initiative areas that are in there. Speaking of Dr. Patra, I did want to express thanks to her for working behind the scenes to evolve the UMERS site based on the information that Dr. Kim's office and others were providing. And of course, Dee Dee Allen was quite principled with that, as well as she historically has supported our faculty success site. So shout out both to Dee Dee and to Deb for their support. So this is the most significant thing to concentrate around, but didn't want to gloss over the other because I often receive questions about it. So this is where you begin to put your direct entry information in. So one of the questions is, what is this? What county do I put? So to be clear, this is the county that your participants at your educational program, where they came from, where they reside. So the county, often it aligns where the county they resided at is also the county maybe we office in and we're teaching in. And so those are often together, but sometimes we might have educational programs because of the promotion of our events and so forth, that we have folks that come from different counties. So the spirit of the reporting to our federal partners is to demonstrate that we have that we are working toward parity as it is aligned with the people that are coming to our educational programs, that aligns with the census data that our state has. So the racial demographics of our state, our goals would be that we are in parity with that. With that said, they also, what we need to know is where the residents came from, whether we're teaching in our county, the county we office in, the county where we manage the extension program and so forth, and maybe they came from another county. If they did, then you have to separate them out. So typically based on the sign-in sheet, they would come in. And so they're gonna, they've registered with you, they sign in, they list their county that's there. And so that's information based on, we've all been trained on our compliance review perspective because we may be subjected to an audit. And we need to be able to demonstrate that, yeah, on February the 15th, I said I had an educational program, and here's the promotional information, here's my sign-in sheet, here was my agenda, I have all the detail and the information. And so on that, I would have collected that information about what county they're from. So if you have a program and you have individuals from multiple counties, you can still put them in. It's no problem. You just do add row here at the bottom. I'll show it to you in a minute. And then you put the next county section in. So if I were looking up and down, I would just sort people based on, the county. So this is the county that they reside in. The next thing is, this is a little bit different. but we've had an evolution based on contemporary needs of our reporting to our federal partners to separate out between adults and youth. So before, if we had a mixed audience, we would put them together. The trouble was then we couldn't sort them when we were being asked which were adults and which were youth. And so now we're asking, you're going to have to select one of these. Again, if you had a mixed group, you had adults and youth that were in your audience, then at the bottom you do add row. If you check adults at the top and you had youth, you would do youth at the next section and you would put those numeric values in. The other thing is, let's say it is adults, direct contacts. Again, these are individuals who are at your program, and we're able to demonstrate that they were there. Back to compliance processes, we produce a sign-in sheet that demonstrates that these individuals had been at our program. So those are the direct contacts that we're able to capture, especially with the spirit of the intent of this reporting process. So let's say I had 60 people at my program, but for whatever reason, only 56 signed in. I captured their name, they registered, I captured their name, I had their county and so forth. And so only 56. So that's the number that I'm going to put there. Now, that's not new information. We have managed ourselves or been required to manage ourselves that way for years. But a frustration was we often had additional people that I may have felt like, oh, I didn't get to count them. But the reality is you could always put those in your curriculum vitae. We as an organization may be able to demonstrate to other partners our total educational contacts and so forth. But for our federal partners, it's the ones that we would then be able to demonstrate that we defensively demonstrate that we have evidence of them participating in our programs. So what is different now is that now what we're providing an opportunity for is that if you had a total of 60, 56 signed in, then you would just put 4 here. They didn't report to you or they're unreported. This number is important because this is the total that you will need to draw on as you fill out these other categories of sex or gender, sex, ethnicity, and race. You're also going to be able to report your unreported. You'll also be able to include your unreported, but you'll have to use that total that you had in this category as your baseline. And so this is a very important number. So I've got 60 that I'm putting in here. The next section, as we've been trained on, we may have people sign in. They've included, where they live, their county, and so forth. Maybe you ask their email so you could put them on your mailing list. Whatever it is that you happen to have included in that registration. We also did ask for this for our categories of sex, ethnicity, and gender. Sex, ethnicity, and race. But they do not have to provide that. That's voluntary. We are expected to ask that, and typically we kind of line it up, but it needs to be separated from the sign-in thing. We don't want to associate what they share with us with a specific name. We've been trained on that for years. Again, so that's often, maybe it's the next table over. You try to provide some kind of separation so that there's some privacy and so forth. Basically, what we're trying to do is to protect their privacy. And so like if they're stacked up and the next person comes up and sees what's there. So there is some, reality of, especially when it's close to starting time and people are going to be there. But if you've done your due diligence and the best you can to kind of create an opportunity for them to fill that out separate from their registration, then that's what is asked of us. Pardon me. Okay, so let's say we did provide that. As we provided that and we get to folks, they're providing, they are sharing with us what their sex or gender is, but it might not match. They may choose not to share that information. And so, that's up to them. But let's say that of the people, of our 60 people that came to our program, let's say 15 identified as male, 15 identified as female. In the federal reporting requirements, those are the only 2 genders that are still that currently are included. So those that identify as male, those that identified as female, But our reality is we may have folks that don't identify by either one of those genders, or two, they may not choose to tell us what their sex or gender is. So we would have an unreported. So adding these together, that's 30. And I know I had 60 at the program. So 30 people unreported. They did not report to us. We have to have a value in these fields, each of these fields. If no one reported to you that they were female, you would have to put a 0. The system won't let you advance if you don't put a value in. If everybody that was there reported, then you would put a 0 there. But anyway, let's say no females. But so if that changed, if nobody indicated that they were female, then this is now, of course, 45, because our total is 60. So moving on, it's the same thing with ethnicity, who reported Hispanic, who reported non-Hispanic, and then unreported. Just for ease of math, we had 10. Someone else reported, and these may not match because they might have shared their sex, but maybe they didn't want to tell us their ethnicity. Okay, so that's 20, and I know 60 are there, so that's 40 unreported. Similarly with race, these the categories that are offered to us are different than what we've had in the past, and they're differently ordered as well. So as that evolves forward, be sure that you are collecting that correctly. And so again, if you didn't have anybody that was American Indian or Alaskan Native, you put a 0. If you maybe 10 people indicated they were Asian, 10 people indicated they were Black or African American. And again, these are on the section. They chose to tell us. Maybe 0 were white. So you just fill these in. Maybe 10 people indicated they were white. There is a category now, some other race. Maybe they don't identify as any of these. And so they may choose as an individual to identify as some other race, or 2 or more races. That's another category that our federal partners recognize as well. So, adding these up, there's 10, 20, 30, and I know there were 60 there. So 30 people were unreported. Now, if I needed to now put in youth, if I indicated they were adults and I had a mixed audience, I would do add row, and I would just select youth and put those numbers in. If I had a program where there were people from multiple counties, I would do whatever county you want to start with, and then you would do add row, and then you would select the next county where they came from. And so that's pretty straightforward. We ask about where the location was. So the spirit of this intent is what the targeted area is. That's what our federal partners are asking of us. And so wherever you promoted that predominantly, that was your geographical area that you were trying to recruit participants from. Sometimes it's going to be your full county, the Baltimore City program. Maybe it's a cluster, especially if there was a multi-county based on our administrative clusters and so forth. Then you could click whatever that aligns with. If this was the Train the Trainer program, if you were training individuals who then, in turn are going to eventually go out and teach on our behalf, and you can collect that those teaching contacts for individuals that represent us. That often comes as certified volunteers. They've been through some type of a program, a Master Gardener program, some other things, but you have to have a mechanism with which then you collect the demographic information from them, and they provide that information to you. There has to be some mechanism that you put into place to collect that data. But at the onset, if you were doing the Train the Trainer, you were training those Master Gardeners, or you were training some Master Volunteer Program individuals that would go represent us and so forth and teach on our behalf. We'd like to know that. If we are doing a Train the Trainer, how many people we anticipate them reaching, the county that the event occurred. So again, this may not always be the same. So it could be that you're offering an educational program, and you're putting in this information, and maybe I'm in Prince George's County. I'm physically in Prince George's County right now, and maybe I had a program, and but the first group, maybe I had a whole bunch of people from Anne Arundel, and I put them in. But then we need to know where the program is. So I would have put Anne Arundel because that's where the participants are from. But here, this is event or county in which the event occurred. And then there's a question about the facility, like what did you draw on the particular facility? So you'll notice our recs are in there, our research and education centers, our extension offices, city offices, those types of things. Lastly, I'll say there's the opportunity to put of course, our instructors in. You can put up to 2 primary here, but here you'll notice there's 11,635 that are in the system. So I'll just pick on myself, put me in, and you're going to find me. Where am I? There I am, J.W. Howard. So you'll also note, if you just did your faculty activity report, that some information was pre-populated. Part of that comes because if we've identified correctly here and we've clicked that, then it's populating that system because it's all in faculty success. So that information will already be available to us. Then if I were, maybe it was a series or maybe it's a one-day event, but we had multiple sessions, I could then, or whoever's reporting this, could put in the title of my talk, and then maybe I had 20 of those 60, 20 were in my workshop. We're not double counting because you'll note there's not an asterisk here. That's the required information is there, but for a number of participants. This again is something you could query later for those if you wanted to put that in your curriculum vitae and so forth. So that's why that's there. And then if you needed more than 1 primary instructor, you can do up to 2. You do add row or add co-instructors. No limit on the next one. You can put as many co-instructors in as you need. And then if you had a non-university partner, who was that? Supporter. Well, then what were, who was the supporter? What was the name? Who were they? And then if you had more than one, you just do add a row and it's going to ask you the same question. Now, this is new. There is an attestation statement certifying whoever types their name in below. They're the one entering the program data. It adheres to the noted assurances of the recipient of federal financial assistance and attests the information is true and to the best of our knowledge, and further understand that I subject myself to further action if such information is found to be falsified. So this is not new information. Again, as recipients of federal funds, I've now been working 36 years. My entire 36 years, we have had to collect the registration, promotional materials, all of the information that should I be audited, should I be coming in question, I would pull that from the files in a compliance review process and be able to demonstrate that we held that program. So the reason this is important is because sometimes if we have support staff, maybe a program assistant, somebody that does this data entry, other than the person that presented the educational program, their name goes in here. So if it's me, I'm of course sharing my own name. If it's someone else, they put that in. So I need to make certain that I have provided all of the documentation that we have that categorized and available should we be audited. So those are the big changes. Just real quickly, I wanted to hop over to Indirect. We're coming up on the 30 minutes, which is my target. But if this was, maybe you're the type of person that every time you get back to the office after an educational program, you enter your educational contact data. If that's what you do, you would enter it once and do save, and you're done. If maybe you put all your entries in on Administrative Monday, that's why we set that day aside. We do a statewide address, the organization comes together, and then we encourage you to update your curriculum vitae, do your monthly reports, whatever report that you need to do and so forth, then that can be included. But if in fact you're putting multiple educational events in, then you could do save and add new, and it doesn't put you out of the system and you have to start all over. So that's pretty straightforward. So as Dr. Kim's memo has indicated, it's always been our expectation or hope that these would be put in monthly. There's an expectation that she has referenced in there about quarterly minimums because we have to have this at real-time data, but the strong expectation is that every month that you put these direct contacts in. And now we're also asking for indirects to be put in quarterly as well, because what we were finding was in real time, we weren't able, as real as time can get, we weren't able to, until the end of the calendar year, to demonstrate how many educational contacts we actually had, because we often captured all of that. We put them in as bulk entries for indirect. Speaking of that, I'm going to cancel this so I don't skew the system and just hop over to indirect real quick. I'm going to go back one level, go down, pretend like I'm going to do an indirect entry. And of course, That is educational programs that you delivered, but you might have used blogs, electronic, the newspaper article. There's social media and other things that you use to present educational programming and so forth. But they weren't directly in the room with you. You weren't doing a live distance teaching, or you didn't have some mechanism where you collected. Maybe you do a video, but you have some mechanism where you're able to collect that registration and ask for demographic information and some other things. But indirect, this is often in the thousands and thousands for us because of the way that we deliver these. And so you would click whatever those are, your program focus, the month, whatever the indirect context for adults, the same for youth. So you need that delivered. And then that same attestation statement is there for you to complete and submit. And then, of course, you either save or save and add new if you're going to do another record. But I'm just going to, cancel out because I don't want to skew the system. So I'm going to stop sharing. So with that, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me, J.W. Howard, and, at umd.edu, and I'm happy to connect. And, if we need to hop on Zoom and talk through anything, I'm happy to do that as well. All right. Take care, everyone.